We're going to talk about the new war propaganda movie Alex Garland directed. Dude, I think Civil War, I never even watched it, but I heard it was so, it's like every single thing that happens, like we'll get back to Canada in a second, but as far as Alex Garland goes, like every single movie studio, no matter how good they are in their inception, inevitably turns into the same old nonsense. And of course, you know, you're gonna have to do some sweet, juicy pro-American imperialism propaganda. Okay, this is the most okay movie ever for a movie about civil war is allergic to politics. Yeah, we haven't even like run out of ideas, but it's just we operate like we have run out of ideas. Yeah, I really want to watch another show. I really want to watch another show about how, you know, dudes went out there and shot children and then it really fucked them up. Like, I get it. It's a real part of American life, but it's just like, how many movies do we have to watch about this? Like, oh, here, Muhammad says, you're not going to believe it, but he's going to kill a child and feel bad about it. Everything is based on memory. Good God. Expect plenty of self-aggrandizing generation of tactical coffee salesmen who enlisted a war to enrich defense and oil companies. Like, we did this already. We did this with a lot of stink. We did this with a lot of pizzazz, okay? American movies that are anti-war inherently, that actually cover the awful nature of American imperial domination and the impact that it has on each individual grunt, each individual soldier, the impact that it has on America's victims. We've done this already. Just literally go watch Kubrick. Go watch Full Metal Jacket. Okay? We have that. We have Jarhead. Jarhead's even funny and depressing. Like, there are fantastic movies that show the real awful ways in which America goes to war for financial gain. This, on the other hand, is like very obviously, yeah, Generation Kill was pretty good. I feel like all of the new war movies nowadays are just like, they're not anti-war anymore. Or my favorite, I will say, my favorite anti-war film is the World War I one. That was insane. The one from that famous book. God damn it. No, not 1917. No. All Quiet on the Western Front. Go watch All Quiet on the Western Front. Okay? Those are good. That's a fantastic one. No, not Dunkirk. And also, I would say Dunkirk and Band of Brothers are pro-war movies because those are the only good wars. You know what I mean? Those are the only just wars. There is no war that is just but class war. And I do think that there's at least some semblance of you know, anti-fascist action that is appropriate, allowed. Those are the last times that, you know, the Western forces have actually engaged in anti-fascist action and not directly fascist action. The American Civil War was also justice on. I'm talking about the last time the Western forces fought a just war. Okay? The last time. And they never let you live that down. They were like, yo, remember how good World War II was? This is just like that. Remember how good World War II was? That's why we have to kill so many people in Afghanistan. Remember how good World War II was? That's why we have to kill so many people in Vietnam. Remember how good World War II was? That's why we have to do the Korean War. Remember how good World War II was? That's why we have to destabilize Libya. Remember how good World War II was? That's why we have to do everything in our power to ruin the rest of the planet. And it's like, yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one. And it gets me patriotic too. Whenever I watch Band of Brothers, I see it. But like, it's just all sucks. Every war movie, good or bad, is an anti-war movie. Spielberg, stupid. Violence is very ambiguous in movies. For example, some films claim to be anti-war, but I don't think I've really seen an anti-war film. Every film about war ends up being pro-war. Truffaut, smart. I don't think so. I guess like you could say that about Full Metal Jacket though, when you think about it, because everybody always thinks of, but I will say, yeah, everybody always thinks about like how sick it is when you have when you're on a helicopter with an M60 strapped to your chest, just mowing down random Vietnamese people. They don't think about like Private Pile. They don't think about how much people get fucked up. You know what I mean? So I think like all movies do end up glorifying ultra violence in some way. All war movies end up glorifying ultra violence in some way. And a lot of people end up taking learning the wrong lessons. Having said that, however, I will reiterate, All Quiet on the Western Front, no glorification. All pain. Okay? All guts, no glory. So there are definitely some solid anti-war movies for those with eyes to see that don't even remotely glorify war at all. So I would say that, All Quiet on the Western Front is like a pretty good example of that. I'm going to go pee really quickly. This is a YouTube video that says anti-war films don't exist. Okay? I'm going to start this and I'll be back in a second.
There's no such thing as an anti-war film. These are the words of François Truffaut, and there are different ways to interpret this remark, but it's widely agreed that Truffaut was suggesting that movies will inevitably glorify combat when they portray the adventure and thrill of conflict. When Truffaut made this comment, he was referring to Stanley Kubrick's 1957 film, Paths of Glory, which is considered by many as the greatest anti-war film ever made. But in the same interview, Truffaut continues this remark. I find that violence is very ambiguous in movies. For example, some films claim to be anti-war, but I don't think I've really seen an anti-war film. Every film about war ends up being pro-war. I love a lot of the films that Truffaut is talking about. But the strange thing is, I don't entirely disagree with what Truffaut is saying. If you look at the science behind war movies and the effect they have on our brain, Truffaut is actually right in a lot of ways. Regardless of genre or subject matter, at their core, all films are created as a form of entertainment, and our minds are consciously aware of that, but it still reacts. In a study conducted at Washington University regarding the psychology of movies, Professor Jeff Zaks states, "You know there is nothing up there on the screen that can touch you or hurt you or pull you out of your chair, but we react as if they can." This is where neurocinematics comes into the equation. Neurocinematics is an area of research that explores the impact of film on the human brain, combining insights from neuroscience, psychology, and film studies. A leader in this field of research is Yuri Hasan, whose work utilizes MRI scans to measure the brain activity of a subject whilst they view a movie.
This guy does actually sound like Nathan Fielder. Okay, but here's the thing. Okay? All Quiet on the Western Front is like a fantastic example. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to say that it's not like or not All Quiet on the Western Front? Sorry, Zone of Interest is also another fantastic example. I wonder if it's because it doesn't feature any of the war aspect of the war itself that it actually is not considered like, it actually has no, it's not a war movie. It's a movie about the Holocaust, but also without even showing the Holocaust at all.
Studies reveal that certain films can exert considerable control over brain activity, with the degree of influence varying based on the film's content, editing, and directing style, meaning that directors can literally influence how our brain is working through their filmmaking choices. Filmmaking is an art form that literally lives and dies through its choices. It's controlled entirely by the intent of the filmmakers. Everything that's put on screen is put there intentionally, and it's done so with the intent of creating an emotional response. Right now you may be freely looking around your room, out the window, or at your coffee cup on your desk, but in cinema you can't do this. Everything we see is curated by a director. Every gunshot, every explosion, every drop of blood, and every tear is there because it was put there intentionally to elicit a response. And this is where we begin to enter a paradox. Because in the case of most anti-war films, the emotion that our brains respond with is adrenaline. The paradoxical effect anti-war films have on the human brain, particularly through the elicitation of adrenaline, underscores a complex psychological phenomenon. It's a strange thing, because even though these films aim to depict the horrors and futility of war, their intense and often graphic portrayals can inadvertently trigger the body's adrenaline response. This response, characterized by heightened physical and mental alertness, is not inherently negative. The rush of adrenaline, therefore, transforms a viewing experience into one of excitement and heightened engagement, regardless of a film's heavy subject matter. Consequently, an intended anti-war message may be overshadowed by the viewer's physiological and emotional response, illustrating the intricate interplay between film content, brain chemistry, and viewer perception.
I don't know. Like, so what is it? Is it that just like if there's anything that tickles your brain receptors in a positive manner, or not even in a positive manner, but if there's anything in the war movie that like pumps up your adrenaline, then automatically it's like it's pro-war. Especially because for a war movie to like, regardless of its intentionality of the director and the writer, for a war movie to, I guess, sell well, there has to be like at least some kind of ultra violence, some kind of action, and oftentimes they put that in, and then that kind of undermines the intention of the war movie. It's also it's best represented with the phenomena of Starship Troopers. It is a anti-fascist film. Starship Troopers deliberately is created as an anti-fascist work, not the book itself, but the actual movie. Okay? And yet there are a million people that just kind of watch it as like, oh, they're killing all these bugs. That's kind of funny, whatever. And then there are people who actually watch it and go, oh, this is pro military. I go so far as to say that like the over-the-top jingoistic sentiment, the chauvinism, the inhumanity, like all of that is oftentimes people take a back seat. Like people's reception of the work, the actual intention of the work takes a back seat because there is a lot of like cool scenes. Zone of Interest is pro-Nazi, I feel. What? No. What? Zone of Interest was written, and first of all, Zone of Interest is a book, and the depiction is directed by a person who is a direct descendant of Holocaust survivors, and there is not a single aspect of that movie that is pro-Nazi. I was gonna use Zone of Interest as a great example of like a movie that leaves nothing on the table. To be fair, I've seen valid criticism that even if it's anti-fascist, the amount of screen time given to those ideas is so limited that it fails its goal of being anti-fascist. No, because then I also run into the other problem, which is making things specifically so that there's no subtlety, making art less subtle so that like everyone gets the point. It's not supposed to be a lecture. It's show, don't tell. Okay? So I want artists to be able to demonstrate their vision without constantly trying to make agitated propaganda. Okay? Just because the broad audience has no media literacy skills and no way of like critically examining the work and basically looks at it and says, oh, this right here is what you see is what you get. So Top Gun is pro-war? Yes, of course Top Gun is pro-war. What are you talking about? It is overtly pro-war. That's not what we're talking about. I don't think anybody hides that Top Gun is pro-war. It's like, it is a franchise created directly to like, you know, get more people to sign up to the Air Force. Yeah, Top Gun is both pro-war and pro having gay sex with your best friend and not having any sort of straight sex with women, no matter how hard they try. Like literally, that's a very important part of Top Gun. A lot of people forget that it is absolutely about having homosexual sex with your besties, your guy friends. Yeah, it is Air Force propaganda. Anyway, my point is, what do? Do you make anti-war movies that don't have any sort of like glorified depictions of ultra violence? Like, do you urge artists to put forth a more blunt, more obvious, less subtle way of doing advocacy and just like trying to make things more boring and educational? I feel like that is awful.
And I think there's a lot of films that claim to be anti-war that really fall victim to this. In fact, some of these films I really, really love. It saddens me to say it, but films like Saving Private Ryan, Full Metal Jacket, Apocalypse Now, Paths of Glory, and Dunkirk all lose their impact as anti-war films because fundamentally, they glorify it. Let's take a look at Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, for example. Now, this is one of my all-time favorite films.
Me too.
And for the longest time, I saw Full Metal Jacket as the
Shit me up when I was a kid, dude. I was like, damn, I think it was the first time I realized why they have like rating systems in place. Because when I saw Private Pile blow his shit up, I was like, as a child, okay, as a young boy, I think I was like 12 or 13 or something. I was like, oh fuck, I don't think I was supposed to see this. Like, I literally still remember. I watched it on VHS, I think. If I'm not misremembering, I might have been a DVD. But literally, when I watched it, I was like, oh my God, I don't think I'm supposed to see. I think like in something unlocked in my mind where I was like, I'm pretty sure I will never be the same again after this moment.
Embodiment of the anti-war genre, but it really isn't. The dehumanizing first and second halves of Full Metal Jacket definitely don't intend to paint a flattering picture of military life. Yet, R. Lee Ermey's abusive drill sergeant has become somewhat of a folk hero, and the 1,000-yard stare has come to signify badassery rather than an unwashable stain on one's soul. The action meant to simulate the dread and misery of war instead becomes riveting and addictive. So if none of these films are anti-war films, then what is? In 1998, whilst promoting his film Saving...
That's why when you do anti-war flicks, if you can't do any anti-war flicks, you can only cover war from the side that is just. Okay? That's why the real like way to solve this problem is covering Vietnam from the perspective of the Vietnamese, not the South Vietnamese government, but straight up from the North Vietnamese, from the perspective of Ho Chi Minh. You talk about Band of Brothers, you talk about Saving Private Ryan, that's fine. That's the right side. Okay? So if you do a flick about Vietnam, you got to cover it from the perspective of the Vietnamese who were fighting against the American invaders. I'm just saying. It's called Star Wars. They already did that. It's literally called Star Wars, one of the most famous franchises that America has ever created. Very openly and very intentionally, George Lucas said, I saw the Vietnam War and I wanted to make something from the perspective of the Vietnamese. That's what it's called. Except it failed to get that message across because Americans literally don't understand that they are the villains in that story. And also, I'll take it one step further. I've heard stories of like Navy cruisers playing Imperial Death March, openly adopting the villain role.
Private Ryan. Steven Spielberg took opposition to Truffaut's comments. In fact, he stated the complete opposite. Any war movie, good or bad, is an anti-war movie. I don't think what Spielberg is saying here is right. But I think to disprove
I don't agree with that, by the way. I definitely don't agree with Spielberg's
comments. We need to look at what exactly defines an anti-war film. And to do that, let's take a look at what many people consider the definitive anti-war film. Elem Klimov's Come and See. The film throws us into the abyss of World War II through the eyes of Floria, a Belarusian teenager eager to join the fight against the Nazis. But Come and See transcends the genre by wielding its visceral violence not for entertainment, but as a searing indictment of war's inhumanity. The film's brutality is unrelenting. Klimov doesn't shy away from depicting the unimaginable. Burning villages, mass executions, and the psychological
I gotta watch this.
Torment inflicted on civilians are shown with a horrifying intimacy.
Jesus
This
Christ.
unflinching portrayal is born from Klimov's personal experiences. Klimov is a survivor of the Battle of Stalingrad. As a child, he and his family escaped the city by crossing the Volga in a makeshift raft. Having seen the devastation of war firsthand, he refused to sanitize it for the screen. Come and See doesn't portray war as the grand conquest for a just cause. It's about the...
They're saying it's free to watch on YouTube. I might do it. I might do a Moby night. It'll you up, dude. Yeah, the full film is available on YouTube for free. Devastating. Yeah, I might do it.
The erosion
Don't
of
test
innocence. Floria, initially wide-eyed with naive patriotism, transforms into a hollow shell. His youthful spirit is completely devoured by the carnage around him. This is where Come and See's anti-war message transcends other films. It doesn't offer catharsis through victory or the comfort of clear heroes and villains. Here, everyone is a victim caught in a maelstrom of violence.
Little bro. You know, like, movie depictions of ultra violence is not a terms of service violation because it's fake. It's real gore that is actually a terms of service violation, unless it's a depiction of nudity. If there's a lot of like real nudity, then yes, you can't show that. But you can show fake blood. What are you talking about?
The film forces us to confront the true cost of war, not just in the lives that have been lost, but in the fracturing of humanity itself. This is why I think Come and See serves as a perfect benchmark for creating a criteria that defines whether a film is truly anti-war. So here's my criteria. Number 1,
Oh yeah, if there's some sexual violence, then yeah, you can't. I don't think you can show that.
the film should avoid portraying war as a noble or heroic endeavor. Instead, it should focus on the senselessness and moral ambiguity of conflict. Number 2, the film must depict the widespread devastation caused by war, including the impact on civilians, soldiers, and the environment. Number 3, the film should be informed by the personal experiences of those who have lived through war, providing an authentic and unflinching perspective. And off the top of my head, I can only think of 2 other films that conform to this. Firstly is Larisa Shepitko's The Ascent, based on a novel by Belarusian writer Vasyl Bykov. The film is set during World War II and follows 2 Soviet partisans as
I don't know if I agree with this because the defense of the Soviet Union wasn't a pointless war. No, I think the point of it is if something is supposed to be anti-war, then I think the idea is that like if you're a full-blown humanist, if you're a full-blown like maximalist when it comes to being a anti-war humanist, then your attitude is supposed to be that like any violence is bad and that there is a lot of moral ambiguity in war, in the ways in which people fight. Like if you're a full-blown pacifist, that's where you're supposed to. That's your approach conceptually to war. The difference, however, is that not many people are actually like that. I'm certainly not like that. I think that there is a concept of just war. Yes, I think that defensive actions taken against those who are fighting are just. The issue is everybody claims that their actions are defensive. You know what I mean? The reality of the matter, however, is that even just wars are still horrifying and end up taking away the humanity of those who participate in it on either side.
they struggle to survive whilst evading Nazi capture. The Ascent portrays the internal and external struggles of its characters without resorting to heroic tropes. The film's focus is on the moral dilemmas faced by the protagonists, highlighting the complexity and futility of their situation. The film vividly depicts the physical and psychological toll of war, with its harsh, snow-covered landscape serving as a powerful metaphor for the desolation and despair spread by conflict. Larisa Shepitko's father was a high-ranking officer in the military. When talking about her childhood, this is what she had to say. "My father fought all through the war. To me, the war was one of the most powerful early impressions. I remember feeling upset. The family separated. I remember hunger and how our mother and us were evacuated. The impression of a global calamity certainly left an indelible mark on my mind." The next film that conforms to this criteria is Masaki Kobayashi's Human Condition trilogy. Masaki Kobayashi's Human Condition trilogy is a sprawling exploration of the...
My dad is a devout pacifist Christian, but seems to think the Korean War was the closest thing to a just war. Is that just ignorance? Yes. It's not just like any... That is like that is an incredibly ignorant position. It is completely unacceptable. It's wildly ignorant and completely unacceptable. You should show your dad my coverage over the Korean War from a couple days prior. I think it was on Saturday, where I talked about the Korean War and talked about like the development of the authoritarian, brutal dictatorship in South Korea that the American government propped up and also militarily defended, both in the lead up to the Korean War and, you know, the genocidal actions that America engaged in the Korean War and then in the aftermath of the Korean War as well. Even if you're on the right side during a just war, you commit heinous acts of depravity. Britain was on the right side in World War II, yet they genocided millions of Bengali. America was on the right side of World War II, yet they murdered countless civilians in Dresden and Hiroshima. Exactly.
Human cost of war. The trilogy follows Kaji, a pacifist and socialist, as he navigates the horrors of World War II and its aftermath. The trilogy presents a stark and unflinching portrayal of the brutality and inhumanity of war. Kaji's journey is one of moral and ethical struggle, not of heroism or glory. The trilogy covers a vast range of experiences, from the labor camps to the battlefield, providing a comprehensive view of war's devastation, depicting the suffering of soldiers, prisoners, and civilians alike. Kobayashi's own experiences as a soldier who refused to fight and was subsequently imprisoned deeply influenced his work. His personal commitment to pacifism and his first-hand knowledge of war's horrors are glaringly evident throughout the trilogy. While Truffaut's assertion that there's no such thing as an anti-war film holds weight in many cases, films like Come and See, The Ascent, and the Human Condition trilogy completely challenge this notion. They demonstrate that it is possible to—
I'm not gonna lie, it is a little sad and a little suspicious, and you're right to call this out. We do not have a single damn movie that actually even broaches like being anti-war from the Western world in like the last decade. I guess, like I said, I mean, judging by his analysis, he does not consider All Quiet on the Western Front to be that. I do think All Quiet on the Western Front is a pretty solid anti-war movie. And I mean, Zone of Interest doesn't technically approach World War II. It simply talks about the German reception, the careerist German reception to the heinous acts, the heinous atrocities that they engaged in the Holocaust. So there's some. This guy wouldn't consider them to be anti-war, though, even though I would. Hacksaw Ridge is American anti-war. I haven't seen Hacksaw Ridge, so I don't know. Maybe.
create a cinematic experience that truly conveys the horrors of war without succumbing to the allure of spectacle. However, these films are extremely rare and require a delicate balance to avoid the pitfalls that Truffaut was warning against. Ultimately, the power of these films lies in their ability to make us pause and reflect more deeply on war's horrific nature and the senselessness of it all, and how dangerous it actually is to glorify it. Thanks for watching the video, and be sure to subscribe. If you want to see more content like this, then support the channel by heading over to our Patreon page, where you'll get exclusive access to behind-the-scenes content, early access to videos.
Hell yeah. This was a great YouTube video. You should get the filmmakers of No Other Land on stream, a film about Palestinian displacement made before October 7th is getting awards all over the place, probably getting an Oscar nom. I don't think it's reasonable to say that the beauty and curation that goes in the movies can shift its overall meaning completely. It seems to me that exaggeration of violence will exist in Hollywood-esque war movies, but that doesn't mean it's pro-war. I mean, if you want to have a conversation about what is unironically and unconditionally pro-war and pro-American imperialism, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, I think those movies are more... Those movies play a more formative role in developing like good-bad dynamics and also righteous violence in the minds of unsuspecting Americans in a way that is insidious, significantly more than like a show that unintentionally ends up, a movie that unintentionally ends up giving you like somewhat of a glorification of violence while it is trying to genuinely, earnestly, intentionally tell you that war is bad. That is my, I guess, somewhat hot take. Not to say that like those movies shouldn't exist or anything. I'm not like this is just criticism, right? And I need people to understand that you can still watch these fucking movies. Like, who gives a shit? You know, I don't care. But I hope you understand that like that is what this is. I think those movies end up doing more to justify this kind of stuff than even a movie like Chris Kyle, if that makes sense. And I mean it. Like, I think Chris Kyle is slop, right? What is it, like Lone Survivor, Chris Kyle? These kinds of movies are like directly created to propagandize American military action, okay? And I say that the Marvel Cinematic Universe plays either the same level of like pro-American imperialism or even more.